Go Dragons. And now, I'd like to introduce to you someone who has lived this experience and can share firsthand how it changed the trajectory of his life. Anthony Bucci is a technology developer turned entrepreneur and the co-founder and former CEO of the largest online retailer in the motorcycle industry. He'll share a little bit more about this in his own words. But notably, Anthony was named one of 40 under 40 business people in the Philadelphia region for 2011 by the Philadelphia Business Journal. He was one of Drexel's 40 under 40 for 2014 and the university's 2012 Entrepreneur Alumni of the Year. He was also part of YouTube's 2012 class of video marketing ambassadors and received the Pact IT Innovator of the Year and the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year awards with his co-founders in 2014. So please welcome Anthony to the stage.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Good morning, Drexel faculty, parents, and prospective students. Thanks for having me today. My name's Anthony Bucci. In 2004, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in information systems upon completing a 5-year program with 3 co-ops. After Drexel, I worked in e-commerce for a few years until I founded my own company called Revzilla here in Philadelphia. In 2016, 12 years after I graduated, Revzilla was acquired by another company. At 35, I could have retired. Being asked to be here today and speak to you is certainly a product of my resume. I worked incredibly hard, got enough right, enough lucky, and certainly had a ton of help along the way. But today, let's talk about the foundation that allowed all of that to happen. In 1998, I sat in the same seats you're all sitting in today, about to graduate from high school, about to make major life choices. I was scared. I was scared because I knew I was interested in technology, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with it. I was the most frightened about the thought of graduating and not having a job, or taking a job that wasn't the right fit, potentially choosing the wrong path to start my career. It was also unsettling to think about myself in a role misaligned with my strengths, although I certainly couldn't articulate it that well back then. Junior year of high school, I'd done a handful of college tours with my mom and dad, and I'd seen great programs in Boston, in New York, in Arizona, and here in Philadelphia. But nothing really clicked until I visited Drexel. The day I visited campus for the first time was sweltering. It was overtly brick and concrete, and in the 90s, it was fresh off of winning some ugly campus awards, very different than it is today. Our student guide also was quite proud to be oozing punk rock that day and happy to share more detail than we care to hear about his facial piercings and some other hardware that we couldn't see. I think my mom cried a little bit at some point that day, but it was fine, she made it. But things really changed when we took a deep dive at the point in the tour that day surrounding the co-op program. To me, 3 6-month internships in a city environment would allow a ton of options to gain experience and hopefully mitigate my early career concerns. I knew on the ride home that day that I'd be a dragon. I entered Drexel as a freshman in the fall of 1999. As a computer science major, and I quickly learned that I'd be learning much more about life than just work and school at Drexel. I also learned that I love the city of Philadelphia. Even as a broke college student, the city was an amazing playground. I was always surprised by how much time we ventured off campus, really enjoying all that Philly has to offer for a young person who was open to exploration and new ideas. That year, I also learned how to focus and apply myself differently. I spent high school learning how to learn, but not really ever struggling with academics. For the first time, I had to really figure out how to balance life, school, and work. It was an early lesson in adulting and becoming differently responsible for my time, effort, and outcomes. I got 1 C during college. It was first semester freshman chem. I also learned that year that music on the internet is not free, but DU administrators are reasonable as long as you're reasonable. A nice lady named Candace, who also happened to be the head of the university's information security office, explained to me that I could not share all of my MP3s across the entire school network if I wanted to remain a student. I spent the second half of freshman year on double secret probation. My parents still don't know about that one. Lesson learned, my mom and dad were less proud, but again, we made it. Sophomore year, I learned that while my friends at other schools were only doing core courses, at Drexel, I was already hacking through comp sci-related tech courses in prep for my first co-op. In the fall of 2000, I landed my first co-op as a software developer at a Philly startup. We built internet applications during the tech boom of the late 90s, early 2000s. I learned that early stage companies run by young people pay less, they move fast, can be unforgiving, and could sometimes foster a lifestyle akin to a struggling rock band. I love that part. I also learned that internet technology was the Wild West, and I got to work with amazing software developers who showed me what the next level of programming looked like. I was, however, very happy to go back to being a student when the dot-com economy bubble burst that spring, and like many in the space, the company almost folded. As a quick side note, I just realized that around 2000 was when many of you could have been born. That makes me feel very old and a little bit sad, but we're going to move on. In between my first and second co-op, in an effort to cover my expenses, I discovered that you can pay your rent and find a great poker game here in Philadelphia. But I was also informed that even though Drexel is quite entrepreneur-friendly, I could not sell breakfast sandwiches out of the dorm room kitchen from 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. on weekend evenings. Yeah, I was that guy. To her credit, the residential director was another reasonable administrator, Drexel. Stern but fair, just as a warning this time, no more formal sanctions. For my second co-op, however, my coding skills were the best they'd ever been. And I wanted to go for something bigger, but also try something different. Big company, big resume builder. I'd also trade the startup environment for potentially a bigger corporate paycheck. I parlayed my experience from my first co-op into landing a second co-op at Premier Company and negotiating for a senior developer co-op pay scale. I thought it would be a home run. It was a high-paying disaster. I lasted 4 months. The ability to build new tech was there, but I didn't have a dynamic boss I was learning from. The company moved very slowly, and I wasn't mature enough to navigate my frustration within a less ideal environment. I ended up actually having one of those, I quit, well, no, actually, you're fired type conversations. Again, my parents, these days, still don't really know a ton about that one. But for me personally, I went back to school to lick my wounds. It was a huge stub toe. But I took a few early career lessons from that were really important. One, I need to move fast to be happy. I learned that. Two, a big company is much less exciting to me personally. Three, decisions based solely on money and/or prestige typically don't turn out so well. And four, I was no longer sure I really wanted to write code for the primary objective of my career. It was a bit of an existential crisis for me at that point, now into my third year of school. But what I learned comparing both companies and knowing more about what I didn't want to do at that point was invaluable. I also had to explain to the co-op office why I left, notice the quotes, a tier 1 co-op. Again, reasonable administrators, we got through it. If you're still here, Helene, thank you. I appreciated it. In my third and fourth years of school, I applied what was becoming more clear to me at that point. I switched majors from comp sci to information systems. I believe the intersection of people, business, and technology would be a much better fit for me personally. I also knew that I didn't want to spend 10 to 12 hours a day coding, nor did I have the talent or the interest to get to the level of the superstar coders that I'd been exposed to. The ability to easily change majors and stay at Drexel allowed me to continue to move forward without a ton of wasted time, effort, or tuition. My third co-op, I sourced myself. I scoped, coded, project managed, and launched a web content management system for a local chain of 3 nursing homes. While I didn't enjoy the coding piece the way I once had, I had another data point about myself. I could plan, sell, manage, and deliver a real project to a real business. I also think the co-op office was quite happy to let me independently march to my own drummer on that one after the small crater I left on co-op number 2. Being on campus every day during co-op number 3 also afforded me the opportunity to get to know the head of Drexel's campus public safety. His name was Rob. He was patient. He had a great sense of humor. But my friends and I did manage to get banned from the 7-Eleven that spring. Again, another story from another time. Moving on. By the time I graduated, I was ready to begin my career, and I'd put to bed many of the fears that I had had when I was finishing high school. I knew what I was good at. I knew what I was not so good at. I knew more about what I liked, and most importantly, what I really didn't like. I had a great degree as well as relevant experience to help get my resume noticed. But most importantly, my experiences would allow me to join and be a better contributor to whichever company I landed at. I'd also grown up a lot, gaining more perspective on what it would take to succeed and be happy. Sometimes, a lot of times, as you've heard, doing it the hard way with plenty of face palms along the way. After 3 co-ops, I'd created some amazing business relationships to go with it. When I ran into the CEO of the small e-commerce agency from my first co-op around graduation time, he offered me a position to return and develop software for his company. I knew that wasn't the best fit for me at that point, but I had the confidence and self-awareness to ask if I could join the sales or project management teams. He was open to it and willing to take the chance on me. In 3.5 years with that company, I worked at the leading edge of e-commerce with huge national brands like Calvin Klein, Speedo, Oneida Flatware. 24 months in, I was leading the sales department and working directly for that CEO. 18 months after that, I had the confidence and experience to roll the big dice and leave to start my own company. I left to found RevZilla. My Drexel experience, from coursework to co-ops to run-ins with a multitude of reasonable authority figures, all played a factor in my ability to clearly and confidently make choices taking me closer to my eventual success post-graduation. If you choose Drexel, be ready to hustle, be ready to scrap. There's a lot at your disposal, but like many things in life, you'll get out what you put in. You'll learn how to learn, you'll learn how to focus, you'll grow up. The city and business landscape will be your oyster and a part of a huge professional opportunity if you seize it. I hope you'll extract as much value as I did from this ecosystem. The opportunity is real, and at minimum, campus is much better looking than it was in the summer of 1997. Good luck in your decisions, college experiences, careers, and most importantly, your lives. It's real challenging work, but the best is yet to come, I promise. If you need me, you can find me on the internets. This is a lot of fun, and I hope my story can help you in some way. Thank you.